Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, hi. Okay. I'm not quite as tall as this podium requires. You must be this tall to give this presentation. So hi, everyone. I'm Christine Orr. I'm the Senior Director of Business and Community Development at Bio1, and welcome to Implementing Subscribe to Open. So I'm really excited today to be joined by members of the S2O community of practice. Today we have Tricia Sharoon of Project Muse, Sunshine Carter, University of Minnesota Libraries, and Erin Haddad Null of the Center for Research Libraries and the Neural Consortium. And we're very excited to see so many S2O community members. Are you an S2O community of practice member out there? Publishers offering an S2O model? Librarians who have acquired and added S2O? Great, just so we know who's in the room, okay? So there are over 400 titles now being offered under the S2O model, and it relies on a lot of existing structures and workflows. That's some of the appeal. It's quite simple to implement. So that's why we're here. If it's so simple, what changes do we actually have to, make it happen? So today we're going to talk about the practicalities of implementing this model, what we've learned in adding it to our portfolios and collections, and some important details about ensuring that these titles are discoverable and usable, which of course is one of the main points of making content open access. Sorry, I'm going to keep shifting over here because I feel like I'm behind the monitor. So very briefly, for those of you who may not be familiar with the model, what is Subscribe to Open? We're going to do a very quick 101. And if you were at the vendor display, we had these kind of what it is, what it isn't postcards, and I've got a couple of these we can hand out later. So the model is quite simple. It's an equitable open access model for scholarly journals that enables subscription journals to open access to current year's content without APCs. So it's quite equitable. Libraries continue their subscriptions or begin new ones. Typically there are subscriber-only benefits, so it isn't a donation. And if the annual funding threshold is reached, that volume year's content becomes open access. If it is not, the threshold is not reached, then the content remains available only to subscribers just as before. So it's low friction, easy implementation, cost neutral, and a lot of times you will see it is used for journals with existing subscriber bases that already value the content. So that's the brief what it is. So I'm going to talk about what we have done at Bio1 kind of under the hood to bring an offer to market to our library community. So this will be some lessons for publishers, like if you're thinking about this, like what were some of the things that we had to think about and decisions we had to make in order to make this happen. And our offer will be going live in Q1 of next year. So we're in our year one of this. So a little background, Bio1's a nonprofit collaborative, and our whole mission is to make scientific content as accessible as possible and to keep our community of publishers financially sustainable, which we do via the investment of subscription funding. So you can see why an S2O model was appropriate for us. Our community of nonprofit publishers consists of small organizations who are nonprofit societies, university presses, museum presses, publishing in our subject areas of biological and environmental sciences, okay? But S2O is kind of subject neutral, okay? So again, one of the most important things for us was maintaining the financial sustainability for our publishers, the vast majority of whom sustain their operations solely via Bio1 subscription money, okay? And the S2O model, as you can see here from our very brief transparency report, over 60% of our revenues go right back into our publishers. We run a really lean, technological operation. We're only 8 staff. So we needed to maintain, this pie chart needed to keep looking like this pie chart for us. That was very important. So here are just a couple of the publishers that we support and who are in the S2O cohort. Taryn Grant, guy on the bottom there, he's a herpetologist. He's the editor-in-chief of the first journal from Brazil to be offered under an S2O model, and we're really, really proud of that. So his society, like I said, gets the vast majority of their funds from Bio1 subscriptions. And he told us they use those funds not only to support their journal and the journal operations, but to support their community. And we said, say more. What else? What do you mean by that? He said, one of the things we've been able to do recently was offer a scholarship to single mothers to attend their annual conference and participate in that research community. And that is exactly the kind of access and equity that we want to see from small community publishers, and why we're so glad to be able to support them, and why we think it's important to support them. Okay? Thought I got ahead of myself. One of the other decisions that we made was we made the decision to implement S2O as a 3-year pilot. And for all my Schoolhouse Rock alumni out there, we know 3 is a magic number, right? So we wanted to have a stable set of data, minimize variables over a couple of years. So each publisher, so out of our 200 plus publishers, 54, representing 71 journals, are in this kind of sub-cohort for S2O, so it's not all of our titles. They've committed for 3 years, no ins, no outs. That collection's not going to change. And Bio1 has made financial guarantees to them. They will get a minimum amount of revenue for the next 3 years, so that these are the kind of publishers who can explore open access without putting their organizations and their communities' activities at risk, okay? So what that means, translating that, once we made that decision to do it as a stable 3-year pilot, that also offered stability for our libraries. So it's the same collection. It'll be the same Bio1 complete as before. The S2O cohort is not going to morph over the 3 years of the pilot. And the same exclusive benefits will remain in place. So for us and our S2O offer, the exclusive benefits include subscriber-only access to our entire back file, which is over 190,000 articles, and current contents of the non-S2O, the subscription-only titles. So it's a very strong subscriber benefit, even while hopefully we'll be able to open current year content for 71 titles. So again, the appeal for having this stable set of data over 3 years, we'll be able to monitor, evaluate adoption, what's the financial picture look like, what does the usage look like? Do we see more institutions accessing this content? Does usage and consumption of this content go up? Do citations go up? So that we can then make a very data-backed decision as to how do we move forward after the end of this pilot. So once we made those decisions, we established the model, the pilot year structure, and the collection. We needed to make some operational changes to subscriptions and subscription management. So first, we wanted to get commitments from libraries that matched that of the publishers and cemented the cost neutrality for libraries over those 3 years. So we established and shared 3 years of pricing for all customers around the world. And we asked all of our customers, if they're able to sign 3-year license agreements and 3-year commitments to continue subscribing to Bio1 Complete over the life of the pilot. We also included in those agreements earlier order dates and invoicing dates that would align with the S2O target deadline of Q1. So right now we're kind of hot and heavy getting all of those subscriptions in right now. It's renewal season for us and everybody else in the room. Another big change that we had to make that no one else had to make, but you never know what's going to be unique at your organization, subscribe to open aligns on a volume year. So we had a very nice policy that everybody liked, which was, oh, we get to randomly start subscriptions, start in April, start in June. We couldn't do that anymore. So we had to move 50% of our global subscriber base off their preferred cycle and onto January. So we had to create a lot of custom prorating options and work through that with customers so that they could accommodate it in the next 1 or 2 years of budget cycles, okay? And we started that process nearly 2 years ahead of time so that libraries would have that time to make those adjustments. And once we had those agreements in place, we then actually had to capture all that data. We had to be able to back up what we had agreed with our libraries. We had to put it into our CRM. We use Microsoft Dynamics. So that we could run renewals from an operational perspective, hit the invoicing at the right time, know when to expect payments, know when to expect orders and commitments, and which institutions had agreed to a multi-year. We also had a handful of institutions who wanted to prepay for 3 years in advance, which, hooray, but we had to figure out how to do it in the CRM and with the accountants so that that would all make sense and be on the up and up. So that also transformed setting the budget, setting the sustainability target, and baking in all of that data will also allow us to do the much more frequent reporting and progression and tracking that is so important with S2O. So it was setting the table to help us be successful and monitor and do upward reporting and budgeting. And our communications and outreach strategy also changed. And this is not S2O specific, but it's important for any kind of change management. So from the beginning, we explained not only what we were doing, but why we were doing it. What values were we centered in, okay? We were talking to Erin about moving Neural off of April and onto January. So again, a really big shift. And at first, it wasn't so much reluctance, but just like, oh, why is that all happening? And we said, oh, that's right, we need to tell you why we're doing this, right? So we talked about S2O, and we talked about our goal to make our content more accessible and experiment and grant more open access to this content, which was a goal that they shared. It aligned with Neural's values. So she just said then, okay, we're going to tell the members what's happening. And for us, it was a really good lesson to lead with that why, lead with your values, and you can always get to the details. That can always follow the how. And we also wanted to illustrate for our libraries why supporting this community of publishers mattered. What's different about Bio One? What was special? So we wanted to go beyond stating like, yeah, we give $78 million back to nonprofit publishers, but what is that supporting a community of field biologists and herpetologists and, arborists really mean? So stories like Taryn's that I shared earlier, we wanted to bring more of those stories. So we embraced storytelling and led that with values too. So we launched a series of interview-style publisher profiles so people could kind of meet the publishers. We did LinkedIn features, and we did a webinar that was very, very well attended by many, many librarians around the globe, and we brought 3 of our publishers here to talk about what does it mean to them. Okay? So it also was able to help bridge the gap between our library and our publisher communities. And that was really, really a valuable exercise. So finally, we thought about each stakeholder audience, from the accountants who had to figure out those 3-year prepayments, to the board, keeping them involved, to always staff. Staff are the one that are going to have to make these changes. So again, not S2O specific, but any kind of major change management that required some of these workflow changes, you always want to get everyone's buy-in. Okay? So quickly, where are we at? Support has been very strong, and we're extraordinarily grateful. At least 50% of our accounts now are covered by multi-year agreements, and we are very busy with our 2026 subscriptions, as we said. Calendar year migration took most of last year. Our sales staff and sales operations staff was doing an extraordinary amount of work. That's done with just a few small stragglers. But the real result will be, hopefully, announcing a successful 2026 offer year in Q1 of next year. So, quick lessons learned. Everything takes longer than you think. So we announced our commitment to S2O in December 2023 for a 2026 launch. Okay, so we had to boxcar a lot of processes, and as always, emphasize your mission and your shared values. And when you can find a common why, it makes these kind of big changes so much easier. And with that, let me hand it over to Erin. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Erin Haddad-Null from the Center for Research Libraries. I work primarily with the narrow licensing program at CRL, and I'm going to talk a bit about the consortial role in S2O, which Christine has already touched on, so I'm going to dive into some more of the logistics that occurred on our side for adapting to S2O. A little bit of background first, though, about NARAL. As I mentioned, it's a licensing program at CRL, and it's comprised of 30 core members representing research-intensive institutions. We also have 100+ affiliate members who can opt into license agreements that we offer. As a national leader in negotiated licensing, NARAL advocates for academic and research libraries and aims to build partnerships between higher education and the information industry. And one of the things that really defines NARAL's work is we negotiate based on a set of core values. Those are really at the heart of everything we try to do. So those core values are transparency, sustainability, equity, reproducibility, and flexibility. And we also have preferred deal elements, things that we look for in each agreement that we pursue that try to match to those core values. And I should add here, we are actually in the process now of revising those core values and preferred deal elements. So these might be slightly tweaked in the future, but at the moment, these are the ones that we're still using. And just a URL down there if anyone's interested in more information. Okay, and then the S2O initiatives that we've done to date. Annual reviews, we've had their S2O agreement for a few years now. American Society for Microbiology, NERL first started offering that agreement in 2025. And Duke University Press's Demography Journal. We also offer traditional subscriptions, but that journal of theirs is an S2O one. And then Bio1, their S2O agreement is launching, coming in 2026. In addition to the license agreements, NERL and CRL have an open publishing models team, and this is comprised of member volunteers who investigate ways to assess S2O or OA offers and inform negotiations for various OA models. So realizing that those are a little bit different than the traditional subscription models, that team is interested in how do we understand how to assess those. And as part of their work, they've been reviewing various S2O models to develop an assessment process and see how those align with NERL's core values. So I'm going to turn to a spotlight on what the preparing for the S2O offer with Bio1 looked like and the consortium's role in getting ready for that. I think that consortia have a valuable role to offer in supporting S2O because they are the site where consensus can really be built and gathered around support for S2O. And the consortia can do this because they already work in key areas of validation, communication, and logistics. So we are often the ones to first vet. We'll get an offer from the publisher, and we'll take a look and see, does this agreement match our members' interest? Does it align with what we know they need, what their interests are? And then the consortium can serve as a communications hub. So we are able to get information from the publisher, pass that on at scale to membership, rather than it having to go from publisher to each institution, being that go-between when members have questions, when publishers have questions. The consortium helps facilitate that communication, as well as logistics. That's a service that we provide to members, is trying to handle the management of the agreements, of the license itself, doing the logistics around the subscriptions. So we're already in place to adapt that workflow to S2O, which, as Christine mentioned, the appeal of S2O is that it is building on the existing infrastructure for subscription agreements. There are those adaptations and changes that need to be made, but it's a model that, by and large, can sort of take the existing infrastructure in place and work with that. So what did this look like for NERL and Bio1? Well, Christine mentioned one of the first big steps was that transition from the April start of the subscription year, transitioning to January. So we had that initial outreach from Bio1. We were at first like, okay, that's a change, what's going on? Luckily, Christine and other folks at Bio1 met with us quickly and gave us a great overview of, here's the program that we're trying to do. This is the why behind it. And that really helped then. And we were able to make a plan to prorate subscriptions for 2024 and communicate that to membership. And then in 2025, we made that transition to the calendar year subscription cycle. So that now is in place already for 2026, the first year of the S2O pilot. And then for the S2O launch, some of the feedback that we received or we realized based on what members had told us before is that we were going to need some more flexibility. We have a handful of members that have certain constraints where they need a one-year agreement. Even if they're interested in, subscribing, they, fingers crossed, assuming everything goes okay, plan to continue the subscription, they sometimes are bound by where we can't sign a 3-year agreement. So that's something that we try to accommodate as much as possible. And fortunately, Bio1 was really a partner in that and understood that need for flexibility and was willing to accommodate Narrow's ask. So we are able to offer members the option of a 1-year agreement if you need, or you can commit to that 3-year term, which a lot of members prefer as well because it does offer that stability and predictability. So we were really pleased with the flexibility and sustainability that Bio1's S2O offer gave and how that met our core value. And we at Narrow are going to continue assessing how OA deals go and look at how we can continue supporting that in the future. And I'm going to turn it over to Sunshine Carter now.
Hold on just a second. That's okay. Hi, my name is Sunshine Carter. I'm from the University of Minnesota. I'm the Director of Collection Strategy and E-Resource Management. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we support Subscribe to Open and have increased our spend on supporting open access over the years. All of these slides are available for you to look at, so I'm going to go through them a little quickly. You can read them later if you would like. But this slide is really just to say that the University of Minnesota has been supporting open access for a long time, starting with Ag Econ Search, our archive support starting in 2014. We've had lots of different iterations of open scholarship committees over the years. We have an open access policy, and currently we have our open scholarship committee, which I am a member of as well. We created in 2019 a draft policy statement, which we called Towards Open Access. And this is really a document that illustrates our support for open access, particularly green open access, collaborative and cooperative models, and how we can support open infrastructure as well. The short URL is here if you'd like to take a look at that. Our Senate Library Committee also provided a letter of support for that, so we use that to kind of share with publishers, especially because we really want to support Subscribe to Open rather than read and publish agreements. So the majority of all of our support goes towards Subscribe to Open. We do have some read and publish agreements, but those are all through Consortia, our Big Ten agreements that we participate in. So we do have a process for which our liaison selector librarians can use. They can ask our open scholarship librarian to support initiatives and Subscribe to Open. And so this is a way that we can make it easier for our liaisons to suggest things for us. So a small group of us take a look at these submissions that are through a Qualtrics form, and we vote. There's 4 of us. We vote on whether or not to support it, assuming that there's money there to support the initiative. And like I said, we're big fans of Subscribe to Open. That's primarily where the majority of our expenditures go towards in supporting open access. We have an OA Partnerships web page, which we also point faculty to, publishers who want to take a look at why we're not doing read and publish agreements, just to illustrate where we're putting our money. This form does have a lot of questions for our liaisons. We've had various iterations of the form over the years, but we've kind of slimmed it down. We're asking them questions like, who is the parent company? Is it transparent? What is the pricing model? What is the long-term sustainability? Who is getting what? Have you read towards open access? And does this match our values? And so this, I call it a snowball, but I found this picture of a snow roller, which I think is a better illustration of how we're like rolling towards investing more in this open access. This could have been a table, and I've added to it since the last time we gave this presentation, but you can see that since 2020, we've gone from a $50,000 allocation for open access to a $180,000 allocation. And that's because we're just transferring the funds for the subscriptions to subscribe to open. And that is how we are going and showing the impact that we're having on our budget on our subscribe to open. So we will continue that as long as we can, and we do prioritize that. So I'm going to hand it over to Tricia.
Bit short too. Hello, I'm Tricia Miller-Sharoon with Project Muse, and today I'll talk about just one discoverability and technical consideration that we have found both for publishers and libraries that is important to understand for Subscribe to Open. So first of all, Project Muse is happy to announce that in 2025, we had a successful Subscribe to Open launch, making 102 journals from 27 publishers open access, their current year volumes open access in 2025. For 2026, we are adding 8 more titles from 2 more publishers, making the total 110 journals from 29 publishers Subscribe to Open in 2026. Okay, so you have subscribed to your Subscribe to Open journal or package. Now what? So S2O is a conditional open access model for journals. And this is important because there's 6 different kinds of metadata, and open access is actually a cross-section of all of them. So it's actually not even good enough for those 6 types. So the main difference in open access metadata versus gated metadata is that the access type may change every year, and so that means that the metadata is inconsistent each time. So unfortunately, metadata is inherently binary. It's either yes or no, 0 or 1. But luckily, in our community, we have many organizations that are helping to help the discoverability for libraries, so publishers can make sure library discoverability is as seamless as possible. So since there are many discovery and technical considerations, today I'll be focusing just on KBART metadata. Knowledge Base and Related Tools, or KBART, is the NISO recommended practice that allows institutional discovery layers to accurately describe content holdings. It describes a combination of these 6 types of metadata all in one file. According to NISO, the goal is to improve the data supplied to knowledge bases and link resolvers, and the best practice is a recommendation for the communication of electronic resource title lists, cover data from content providers to knowledge base suppliers, and that each file will offer metadata on a sellable package from every publisher and list the titles included, and in the case of the serials, the dates of the coverage. So this is a quick sample. If you work in KBART, this is a very pretty sample of what KBART metadata looks like. And it's very clean except for one row, that one in red, that access type. For those who may not be familiar, our metadata says that content is either free or F or P for paid. And we know that there are now many different kinds of access types for journal volumes. So unfortunately, because of the binary nature of metadata, when you're looking at Subscribe to Open titles in your discovery layer, every single year, if there is a change in access from free to paid, it requires another line of metadata, and in your discovery layer, you could have one journal with 6 or 7 different listings. So of course, this is very confusing both to the user and the librarian, but jazz hands time, the KBART working group has a new recommended practice that they have just come out with this fall. It's open for public comment until November 10th, so if you're deeply embedded in the metadata conversation, please make comment. But this Phase 3, which was initiated back in 2019, finally seeks to improve the support for additional content types and global content, clarify endorsement procedures, and provide more examples and structures for implementing KBART. Very exciting for me. So what does this mean for your library? So first of all, as I said earlier, at the moment, subscribe to open and generally open access titles that change in a journal from year to year, you're gonna see a lot of duplication. So in the future, the new recommendation from KBART will offer the new access type will be called M for mixed, and that will hopefully be alleviated in 2026. So what can you do to help? I encourage you to not only visit the NISO page or other OA recommended practices and policies and standards, but also understand what your metadata means, and if you see something, to understand why is that different, and maybe it's accurate but inconvenient, and what can we do to start a conversation there. Also, if you're pulling metadata from places like DOAJ, and the subscribing organization, it may cause an additional layer of duplication. And then finally, what is coming next? We are strengthening and socializing standards every day. KBART is just one standard that's critical for the success of open access discoverability, but there are many more happening in our community. There's one that I wanted to point out that's new, that may be of interest, and that is the Open Access Discoverability Business Process Working Group. And that will develop a recommended practice on operationalizing OA business practices. And as part of that effort, the working group will conduct a landscape analysis on all current open access business processes that take into consideration current gaps and infrastructure that's needed for protocols and data exchange of open access content. So maybe next year we'll report on that standard change. But I encourage everyone to understand both the challenges and opportunities that open access has with discovery layers and the amazing collaboration and coordination that our entire community is putting in to make it a reality. And finally, all of us on this panel are part of the Subscribe to Open community of practice, and we hope that you'll all consider joining if you haven't already. We have monthly meetings where you just listen, learn, get advice, or share. There's no pressure, it's just sort of a listening session if you're not really sure if you want to be involved. But if you haven't already participated, please consider this your formal invitation to come to our meetings and reach out if you have questions. Thank you.